I already see all the YouTube commenters saying, oh, you're just trying to justify your base Cayman purchase because you're too poor to buy the S. Back in 2016, I was living in Chicago. I just had my first big boy job, and I started to have more money in my bank account than I'd ever seen before. So naturally, being the young 20s, financially irresponsible person that I was at the time, I was on the used car market looking at various sports cars that I could buy to upgrade from my Miata at the time. Now, I had my reasons for upgrading from the Miata, which was a car that I completely loved. I did make a whole video about that though, so if you want to hear those reasons, check out that video. I'll put a link in the description. Most of the things that I was seeing that were in my price range that I really was interested in were mid-2000 Porsche Caymans and Boxsters and some nice S2000s. And only after a few weeks, I found an absolute gem. It was a manual base Cayman with a blue exterior, tan interior, a bunch of options including the Bose premium sound system, and under 70,000 miles. So naturally, I did a test drive, and I wasn't really thinking I wanted to buy a Cayman right then and there, but as soon as I drove it, I knew I had to buy a Porsche Cayman. And at that point, I was faced with a choice. I could go with what was pretty much a perfect Cayman in my eyes, with the exterior color, the interior color, and all the options that I would want in a base Cayman, or I could save up for a few more months and try to go for the faster Cayman S. Spoiler alert, if you can see behind me, I obviously went with the first one that I found, the base Cayman. And honestly, it wasn't really a tough decision at all for me. I hardly even considered the performance difference between the two because I was so in love with this car. To this day, honestly, I don't even really think about the performance difference between the base Cayman and the Cayman S, but I'll explain why. Before I do that though, let's quickly run through the main differences between the specifications in the two Caymans, just so that we know what we're working with. Now, I already know some Porsche nerd is gonna disagree with my specs here, but just so you know, I'm gonna be reading these off of my phone and the spec sheet, which are both specifications from Porsche. So if you don't like the specs and you think they're wrong, talk to Porsche, save your comments for later. So the main difference is the engine. The base Cayman has a 2.7 liter flat six with 265 horsepower and 221 foot-pounds of torque. The Cayman S has a 3.4 liter flat six with 320 horsepower and 273 foot-pounds of torque. The S trim comes with a 6-speed manual, whereas the base Cayman you get a 5-speed, with the 6-speed being an optional extra. Obviously they both come with an automatic. I don't recommend the automatic, but if you have a disability or for some other reason, I guess there's no harm in buying the automatic. Someone's got to drive them, so. But I'm going to be focusing on the manuals here. Now I will admit, sometimes I do wish I had the 6-speed on long highway drives, just because there'd be a bit less engine noise at higher revs between that 70 to 80 mile an hour range. But honestly, I don't do that much long highway driving in this car anymore, so it's not that big of an issue. The S gets you bigger brakes. Those bigger brakes are needed to stop the slightly heavier S version. So what does this all get you in terms of performance? Well, according to Porsche, my base Cayman can do 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds, while the Cayman S is obviously quicker to 60 at 5.1 seconds. The top speed in the base Cayman is 160 miles an hour, and it's 171 miles an hour in the Cayman S, but honestly, I don't think that's really gonna come into play unless you're on the Nürburgring or something like that. So, what does this all mean? From a numbers perspective, I guess there's a noticeable difference, but to me, it's really not significant enough to justify that $6,000 increase. And that leads me to the first of the two basic reasons why I always recommend the base Cayman over the Cayman S. Essentially, the kind of person that's asking the question of should I buy a base Cayman or should I buy a Cayman S, basically what they're really asking is, am I going to regret buying the base Cayman? Because if you're already asking the question, then you're already taking that price difference into consideration, and you're really just wondering if the base Cayman is going to be enough. Because your main worry is going to be, if I go with the base Cayman, am I going to feel like I'm missing out on something that the Cayman S could have given me if I had saved up that extra money, if I had spent that extra $6,000. So that's the first main reason why I always say, if you're asking the question already, just go with the base Cayman. Because for me, I have never ever driven my base Cayman and felt like it was lacking something or that I'm missing out on something that I could have gotten with the Cayman S. It never feels like it's lacking power, torque, grip, braking power, or great noise, much less is it lacking any luxury, because all of the luxury features you can get on the S, you can get on the base Cayman as well. Now, are there times when more power might be a little bit more fun? Sure. Are there times when better brakes might make me more confident in my braking power? Maybe. But does it justify that $6,000 more that I would have had to spend? Absolutely not. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the Cayman S isn't worth the extra money. What I'm saying is that the person that's really going to want that extra performance you can get in the Cayman S, they're already going to be buying the Cayman S. They're not even asking themselves if the base Cayman is right for them. To them, the base Cayman isn't even in the question. So that's why I say, if you're already asking the question, you should just save your $6,000 and get the best base trim Cayman that you can afford. Use that extra money to take your new Cayman on a road trip across the country, or go to a track day every weekend for a month, or do some modifications that'll make it personal to you. That $6,000 is going to go way farther doing experiences and cool personalizations than it could ever go by just upgrading to that S model. All right, so now I already see all the YouTube commenters saying, oh, you're just trying to justify your base Cayman purchase because you're too poor to buy the S. And I mean, yeah, I guess. At the time, I couldn't have afforded the S. I would have had to save for probably 6 to 10 months more before I could have afforded the S. But in my mind, that doesn't even really matter. That's not really part of why I'm recommending the base model. I'm really recommending it because I've owned my Cayman for over 2 years, and I've never, ever, ever regretted it. And I've never, ever thought that I should have gone for the S. Now, if you really care about track times and things like that, then yeah, probably go with the S. But most people who are asking about whether they should go with the base model or with the S are not going to be the maximum track time, track day type of people. And those people that aren't hardcore track day people are probably going to find a lot more value in that extra money in creating awesome experiences and personalization for your own car. And that brings me to the second reason why I don't regret saving that extra $6,000, and why I recommend that people, if you're like me, just go with the base Cayman. You see, people that buy 10-year-old used Porsches are typically the kind of people that really want to squeeze out every last bit of performance and brand clout out of every dollar they spend. And if you're looking at 10-year-old used Porsches, don't tell me that the brand name doesn't matter to you. See, if you're like me and other used Porsche buyers, when you get into about 27 grand range, that's when you start to see some pretty darn good deals on 996 Carreras. And all of a sudden, it becomes very tempting to become a cheap 911 owner as opposed to a cheap Cayman owner. See, when you set your filters to that price range on the used car sites, you see all these Porsche 911s, 996s mostly, that are in that range that seem to be like just enough of a good deal that you'd be going with the 911 as opposed to a much nicer Cayman. Personally, I don't know if I would have the self-control to not go with the 996 Carrera, because I've driven one and man, they are fun. But a 996 comes with its own whole set of risks and issues that I wouldn't recommend to anybody, and I definitely don't want for myself. After all, they do say that the cheapest 911 you buy will end up being the most expensive 911 that you buy. They also say that the Cayman/Boxster is the poor man's 911, and I guess that makes the base Cayman the poor man's poor man 911. So I guess that makes me the poor man's poor man Porsche owner. Does that put the Porsche Cayman into hoopty territory? Yeah, I guess it does. I guess it does. That's fine. I'm a hoopty owner, and I'm proud of it. But what I will say, even though this might be a hoopty, and even though it's not a 911, it has had zero mechanical issues. No engine failure, no IMS bearing bursting through my engine block like an alien chest burster. Just pure, unadulterated fun. And that's something that you're probably never going to experience on a 996 Carrera that's under $30,000. Which is why, if you are looking to spend $25,000 to $30,000 on a Porsche, I might still recommend a Cayman S over a 996 Carrera, no matter how good that deal looks. Right now, I have no desire to upgrade to a new car of any sort, much less a Cayman S, anytime in the near future. At this point in my life, in order to get the increase in performance and fun that I would need to justify an upgrade, that car would have to be so much higher in price that I don't think I could afford it at this point in my life. And that's why the base Cayman is really the unsung hero of the used sports car market. As a closing warning, take anybody's recommendations, and especially mine, with a huge grain of salt, because everybody has their own biases and their own opinions and everything that they care about, which may be completely different from what you care about. I made a lot of assumptions in this video, for example, that may not apply to your situation. So take it with a grain of salt. I'm just glad that I found a car that I really love, and I have no regrets about it. And I hope that you find the same thing for yourself. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Continuity.